So I took a trip to Bergamo, Italy for a couple of days to research macro photography locations for the future, and also to play around with my two favorite travel cameras, the Ricoh GR3X and the Fuji X100V. And I haven't really made up my mind which one I want to keep yet. In this video I'm gonna show you some photos I took while I discuss the 10 key differences between these two cameras. And please note that I took the Ricoh pictures on a different day than the Fuji pictures, so the light is a bit different. First of all, build quality. And I have to say that the first thing you notice is that the Fuji is a lot heavier, but other than that, both of them feel well built. However, I much prefer the overall build quality and feel of the Ricoh, and the main reason for that is the buttons and the dials. The buttons and the dials on the Ricoh feel a lot tighter. On the Fuji they feel more flimsy, and I don't really like the feel of them. This actually detracts a lot from my overall view of the Fuji. I don't really like how the Fuji buttons feel, and it's not only the X100V, I had the same issues when I owned the X-T3 earlier. Number 2, viewfinder. And here we have an obvious winner. The Fuji viewfinder is amazing. Not only do you have a pretty good EVF, you also have it combined with an optical viewfinder, and it makes it a lot more fun to take photos when you can preview them immediately and where you can frame the shot a lot easier, especially on a sunny day like today. With Ricoh, when it's really sunny, it can be really hard to do your composition. So yeah, that's an obvious win for the Fuji. Number 3, size and weight. Here we have a big difference as well. The Ricoh is basically half the size and half the weight of the Fuji. You can barely feel the Ricoh in your pocket, while you can definitely feel the Fuji. And the Ricoh will even fit in a jeans pocket, while the Fuji will make it into a jacket pocket, but definitely not a jeans pocket. So yeah, you have a big difference here, even though the Fuji is of course still a really compact camera. There aren't that many big sensor cameras that you can actually fit in a jacket pocket. Number 4, max aperture. Both of these cameras feature a large, really good APS-C sized sensor, but they have a slightly different lens. The lens on the Fuji has a max aperture of f2, while the lens on the Ricoh has a max aperture of f2.8. So you have one stop more of light on the Fuji, and that can enable you to get a little bit creamier bokeh, for example when taking portraits. So that is something to consider. Number 5, lens cap. There is a big difference here, and the Fuji has a regular lens cap that you can take off and that you have to put back if you want to protect the lens. And that can be a little bit of an issue if you want to take many quick shots and you want to have the lens cap on in between them. The Ricoh is, I think, a lot more convenient here. The lens cap is built in and automatically removes itself when you turn on the camera. So that's really nice, and I much prefer the Ricoh's way of solving this. Number 6, price. You have a big difference here as well. The Fuji comes in at around $1,700 here in Sweden, new. And in many places around the world you can't even buy it because it's usually out of stock. The Ricoh is a lot cheaper, around $1,200 or so, at least here in Sweden. So you get more camera for the money, I would say, with the Ricoh. Number 7, focal length. And here we have a slight difference. The Fuji X100V has equivalent of 35mm in focal length, equivalent to full frame cameras. And the Ricoh, if you buy the Ricoh GR3, you have a 28mm equivalent, so it's slightly wider. Or if you buy the Ricoh GR3X like I did, you have a 40mm equivalent. So it's up to you how important you deem this. I really like both 35 and 40mm, and the difference is not huge. Number 8, flip out screen. This is something that the Fuji has, and the Ricoh does not have. And for me it's not a big deal to not have a flippable screen, but yeah, it can be handy in some situations. For example, this shot where I shot the city over a hedge, it was a lot easier to compose with the Fuji than with the Ricoh, where I would have to take the shot completely blindly. So yeah, that's a win for the Fuji, definitely. Number 9, white balance. And this is something I bring up because I have had a lot of issues actually with the white balance on the Fuji. The auto white balance, to be more specific. It just isn't that good. The Ricoh does a great job at automatically setting the white balance, but the Fuji fails a lot. And I'm actually quite disappointed because the Fuji X100V isn't that old and they should be able to do a lot better when it comes to auto white balance. Number 10, image stabilization. This is another big difference. The Ricoh has really good image stabilization, which enables you to take shots at very slow shutter speeds, down to like 1/10 of a second without a problem. The Fuji has no image stabilization at all, so you really have to keep that in mind when you're using it, and it's much easier to get a blurry image because you're shaking the camera or because you're using a too slow of a shutter speed. So for me personally, I mean, it's not a big deal to not have image stabilization, but it certainly doesn't hurt. So what's my conclusion here? Well, I'm currently leaning towards keeping the Ricoh GR3X and selling the Fuji, but I really love to have a viewfinder. It's such a nice thing to have, especially the one on the Fuji X100V. So I'm thinking that maybe I should buy the external optical viewfinder that you can buy for the Ricoh and see how that works out. But probably I will just keep using both of these cameras for a few more weeks until I can make up my mind on which one I like the most. Or maybe, just maybe, I just keep both of them and use either one of them depending on the situation. Thanks for watching this video and see you soon again.